I want to start with what we're seeing, which is Israel with its massive now expanded ground operation, this wave of strikes as well, saying it's applying maximal pressure on Hamas. Is this going to work in terms of getting Hamas to release hostages?
Well, good evening. It's good to see you, Sumi. I'm sorry that here we are in March of 2025 still talking about a ceasefire. We've had too many conversations about that, and it's the question. A year ago, it was Biden's war, emphasizing the humanitarian side of things, and now we've got Trump's war, which is all hell. The question is, will it be effective? I mean, most Israelis say that they're worried and they're concerned. They do not support this war. But it's very political for Netanyahu. His right-wing coalition is threatening to bolt, and he's got to pass a budget. I talked to one of my high-level intelligence sources, and he said there is no military and no strategic point to this. It's all political. He said we are beyond cynicism. And then from the Netanyahu camp itself, they will say that is Hamas talking points, and this is the only way to bring them to the table. We have to bomb them back to the table.
What about moving into the Netzarim corridor, as we've seen the IDF do? What does that do for Israeli forces strategically?
Well, what Israel would say is that, we've had several weeks now where Hamas has been able to rearm and regroup, and no hostages have been released. They were deadlocked. So now we have to apply deadly force to have any kind of results. That, Special Envoy Witkoff from the United States had presented a reasonable plan to release 11 living hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, and a 6-week ceasefire. It is ceasefire season, as we see with Ukraine and Russia, but there's only one Witkoff. There's only one trusted Trump envoy. And sometimes I wonder if this is just a matter of bandwidth, that the United States is handling a lot, but there's only sort of one person who Trump trusts.
And you do have, of course, Israel and Hamas with very different perspectives on what a ceasefire should look like. I mean, can that be bridged right now when there was a ceasefire agreement that stalled after the first phase expired?
Right. I mean, as one of my counterparts said to me when I was on the Israeli-Palestinian team for the United States, the Israeli said to me, the only kind of plans that work in the Middle East are one-point plans, because you really can't get beyond that. It's kind of a false argument to say, can there be a permanent peace, cessation of hostilities between Israel and Hamas, because they're in a state of permanent war. So, the golden key to all this, and I use the word gold because I'm thinking of Saudi Arabia and Trump's love for that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But the golden key is to release the hostages. After that, there'll be no more pretext for military strikes on Gaza. If Hamas lays down their arms, and if the leadership agrees to depart, then then I could imagine President Trump saying to Bibi, to Netanyahu, time to cut it out. Netanyahu has no choice really other than to listen to Trump. Trump, controls weapons and controls all of Israel's really political shield in the UN, diplomatically. This could come to an end if the hostages were released.
So do you think we will then see ramped up diplomatic efforts from the Trump administration? As you said, they're focusing at the moment on Ukraine and Russia, but with this now developing further, do you think we could see a renewed effort there?
Well, filling the void, interestingly, is Macron in France and Saudi Arabia. They're talking about gathering to have a kind of two-state solution conference. I'm not sure either side. That's a little bit diplomatically tone deaf. People aren't quite ready for two states. Nobody really wants to take a risk at this point. But I do believe that Trump is very visually focused. He's not going to tolerate day after day of images of Palestinian children, especially since Israel's cut off all humanitarian aid. There's about a 2-week window, I think, that Israel's trying to take advantage of before the warehouses and storehouses of Gaza run out of food. It's also the Passover holiday. The Israeli public does not support the fighting. I can't imagine them going into that holiday at war again. So I think that Trump probably was going to do what he does. He doesn't quite flip-flop. He does more of a flip turn. When he, comes up to a wall and hits it, he'll pivot and head off in the other direction. And I think he's going to say, I'm the president of peace. Cut it out, Bibi.
And Laura, before we let you go, what about the talks that we had heard from the Trump administration, from the president himself, about removing Palestinians from Gaza and redeveloping this land? We haven't heard much about that from the president recently.
Yeah, well, again, that's a flip turn. But with Trump, you do have to follow the money. Again, follow it all the way when you're watching Ukraine and Russia as well. A part of what he's doing here, I think, is setting the table, the agenda for the next 4 years. That's why the United States are striking the Houthis in Yemen, while Israel is striking Hamas in Gaza. This is all about signaling Iran and saying, we're setting our ultimatums, and if you don't meet them, there'll be action. We sent you a letter. The United States sent a letter through the UAE to the Grand Ayatollah, to the supreme leader in Iran, and said, you have a 2-month deadline, lay down your nuclear weapons or else. This is all about or else. There's not just bluster, but there's actual bombs behind Trump's rhetoric. At least that's what he's trying to say to the world.
Okay, Laura, great to get your analysis as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you.